Yeah, hi, I'm Paul Archer. Welcome to my video podcast. Now today, Gloucester Rugby, here's the shirt, are playing, so I'm putting on my shirt to support the team. Let me talk to you though about the whole subject of multitasking, particularly when you're on the bank till, mastering the fine art of multitasking. Now, this chap, he had mastered the art. He carried out the transaction that he was involved with me at the time. He did it blindly and engaged me in a brilliant conversation. And as I took the paperwork away from him, I'd been cross-sold and I wanted to be as too. It was brilliant. Let me explain how this worked. Now, I, like many other trainers and speakers, we travel the country, the UK, Europe, often the world as well. And I spend a lot of my time in hotels. Now, since my early days as a trainer, I've always preferred to stay in bed and breakfasts. I much prefer these to the big sort of glamorous hotel chains. You get a better personalised service. I enjoy catching up with the local gossip because the owner of the establishment normally greets you at breakfast and serves the breakfast to you as well. And you can get to talk about what the latest gossip is in town, and you can pick up words and phrases and the things that are happening during the introduction to your training. And I find this really useful. And also, it's quite cheap as well. Bed and breakfast usually a little bit cheaper than the bigger hotels, and I think that's good. But this particular chap who served me at this bed and breakfast was from a B&B in Bedford, just north of London. Now, he was particularly exceptional. Why and how? Well, what he did, he took my credit card details as I was about to leave, and he was whizzed through the transaction. He was going through all his paperwork and the machinery, etc. But not once did he take his eyes off of me. He kept that eye contact going all the time. And in my book, that's absolutely essential, because at the same time, he was engaging me in a conversation. You see, I wasn't having my time wasted. He was talking to me about his previous experience, but he also asked me about my trip, my business trip. Why I was in Bedford, what was I doing, and he was genuinely interested in me. He was also keen to find out when I was due back in town, because that's important, and he twigged that I was back in town in a couple of weeks' time, and he'd inadvertently just booked me in. He cross-sold me, and I didn't know it was happening. I wanted it to happen even then. The clever thing was, he'd done it. He'd handed me the VAT receipt, beautifully written out, and I realised that I'd been booked in the following month. You see, when you're on the bank counter or the retail counter, any other counter that you're on, especially if there's a queue, we often rush ourselves, don't we, just to finish off the transaction and get the queue down. And often, therefore, we're doing the transaction and we don't feel like having a conversation with the person to eke out some hooks because we're rushed to get the transaction done. So the trick is quite simple, really. It's being able to master the transaction so you can multitask. So you can do whatever is the transaction without any flaw or delay, because that's what customers want when they're busy. But at the same time, you can do a little bit of a conversation, keeping that eye contact with them, and that way you can squeeze out those little hooks, those little pieces of information that allow you to cross-sell properly. When I was training building society and bank staff many years ago, we used to train them to do the transaction blindfolded. It was a game, really, but we put blindfolds on them and they had to do the transaction, and therefore they could actually do it, not taking eye contact off the customer. Really important stuff, that, because that way you can eke out those hooks, can't you? Now, the customer will appreciate it if you're chatting away and doing the transaction at the same time. It's where you stop doing the transaction, look up and chat to the person, and there's a queue behind, everyone's getting really frustrated, aren't they? You could also buy yourself a bit of time by saying to the customer, look, the computer's processing the transaction at the moment, so in the meantime, how have you found? You could ask them a question or two, couldn't you? So the secret today then is to find out ways of multitasking your particular transaction so that you can actually chat and talk at the same time. And if you want to follow a master at the process, all you need to do is head down to Bedford in Bedfordshire and pick out my friend there, the hotelier of the B&B, because he actually has mastered the process. Hey, I hope you found this useful. Pop over to my website, www.paularcher.com, if you want to find out more about me and what I do and how I can help you. And hopefully we'll get to speak next week. See you then. Bye.